Hello again. This is my lecture on, in particular, religion, but also philosophy of religion. And this is called lèse-majesté, which is French, but it comes from late Middle English as its origin, which comes from Latin lèsa majestas, which can be transliterated as injured sovereignty. It is, in a sense, the insulting of a dominating figure, and especially in entire belief systems that can be found in civilization, belief systems that issue forth from a religion, and in particular, the religions that were founded between the 8th century BCE and the 3rd century CE, the axial age. These religions all come from the axial age, a term coined by a fellow, Karl Jaspers. Now, to begin, lèse-majesté, or injured sovereignty. There is a recipe for being a great civilization dominating figure, such as the Buddha, Confucius, Socrates, Jesus, and Muhammad. It is this: write absolutely nothing. Have devoted disciples. Be lucky. But this does not include be original. Be profound. For none of these figures was either of these things, though in the be lucky department, each of these figures had followers who were both, and who made from the remembered fragments of their sayings whole systems of thought and practice, which they themselves might not have fully recognized or even have perhaps approved. For the love of victory and for the love of honor, each of these figures previously mentioned was, in their own time, one among many who were doing what they were doing. Usually preaching or teaching, gathering followers, variously borrowing from and disagreeing with others and with earlier teachings of the day. And in the case of some, it was decades. In the case of others, centuries, before the actual teachings attributed to these figures were actually written down. In each case, the followers of their followers soon began to disagree, and as a result split from each other, the schisms and quarrels forming different versions of the legacies that still survive to the present day. On Siddhartha Gautama, he set off as a mendicant wanderer, seeking means to secure release from the endless cycles of pain that constitute human existence. Gautama Buddha arose out of a period in the history of India that was tumultuous, and the tens of thousands of seekers and mendicants, of yogis and ascetics. He, like all the other figures, Socrates, Confucius, Jesus, and Muhammad, they were not doing anything different than all the others. Their teachings, radical as they might have been, were not new. The language that the Buddha spoke in his native land among the Sakya people, who lived in what is now the border area between India and Nepal, on the northern slopes of the Ganges River basin. It was not Pali, Sanskrit, or one of those Prakritic dialects. And the transmission of Buddhist teachings through these languages and later through other South Asian languages and Tibetan, Chinese, and Japanese introduced many differing additions and changings to create what Buddhism is now. As far as Buddhist doctrine, we hear reference the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. Buddhism and its rival outlook, Jainism, is not a religion in a westernized sense of the term religion. It is not a religion, but a philosophy. It does not believe in supernatural deities or miracles. But in other words, even though it evolves no deities or deity, it relies on no messages from transcendent sources about the purpose of life and how to live it. In that sense, we see that humans are addicted to meaning and purpose, and reason is sometimes a slave to passion. However, addicted to meaning as we are, as Marx once said, that religion is the opium for the masses. And as wonderful that religion has been for the psychological state of human existence, in the large part, it has not been very healthy for human thought and progress. And similar matters are no different as regards to Confucius. Confucius was, like Gautama, one of many literati who thought to advise princes and teach a way of life. That was a positive thing. But he had the good fortune to inspire a follower who lived a century after his time, Mencius. About 2.5 centuries after Confucius' death, the first emperor of unified China, Qin Shi Huangdi, 221 to 210 BCE, was a tyrant in the Western view of Plato's Republic, written in the 4th century BCE, and he made a bonfire of the books of all the previous philosophers, and, as it happened, any available living authors of them too, in order to efface the past and to the establishment of the legalist philosophy of his own day. Fortunately, Qin Shi Huangdi was unable to destroy all copies of previous classics. For example, we have the Book of Songs, the Spring and Autumn Annals, the Analects of Confucius, Yi Jing, which is an earlier Anglicanization, also known as I Ching, and Mencius's work, Mingzi. These are philosophical texts of Eastern philosophy. Confucius's reputation blossomed. Many of the ancient classics were attributed to his authorship or editorship, and preferment in the bureaucracy of the empire turned on success in examinations. They ceased to be so only in the first decade of the 20th century. That is, the Confucian character of China was shaped by many long periods when the teachings attributed to Confucius, we subject these to imperial examinations of classics attributed to his authorship. Now, history matters because history exists, and all of these religions appeared in the axial age between 8th century BCE and the 3rd century CE, respectively. As mentioned before, this is the axial age, as coined by Karl Jaspers. And the pattern of these post-mortem collections of sayings and teachings of these men who did not write, the earliest written down decades after the event, and a canon being established only centuries after the event, is repeated in the case of Jesus and Muhammad. The standout figure, however, is Socrates, personally known to Plato, Xenophon, and others who wrote about him. But even here, too, with the exception of some lampoons by Aristophanes, a playwright, nothing was written down about Socrates or recorded of him until after his death. Subsequent philosophers in history developed different aspects of Socrates' legacy. Aristotle, the considered life. The Cynics, his disdain for convention. The Stoics, his fortitude and adherence to principle. But in the case of the Buddha, Jesus, and Muhammad, the divergencies and schisms among their followers in the centuries after their deaths descended into conflict and violence, crusade and jihad. This is a typical feature, sadly enough, that describes humanity all too well. Socrates is, however, like all the others in having been one among a large number of people, in his particular case, the sophists, who were doing much the same thing that he was, teaching, influencing, attracting pupils. Jesus was likewise one of a large number of enthusiasts and prophets, and his form of execution reserved by the Roman authorities was for political insurrectionaries. This suggests that Jesus was not viewed as being much different from many others who were disturbing the peace at that time. Gautama Buddha competed for the attention of his contemporaries with the Jains, with other atheist philosophers of his day, and with the theistic devotees of the India of his place and time. But we must ask this crucial question: why did Confucius, rather than Mozi, come to have followers long after his own time, who elaborated teachings in his name, thus making him the venerated sage of China? Question: why did St. Paul choose to make a religion out of the deceased Jesus rather than some other zealous preacher of the day? We might want to reply by emphasizing the intrinsic merits of their teaching. But I have found, through my degree in theology and my degree in history, a different question, an answer to which became a delightful quest of knowledge, both ontological, epistemological, and metaphysical. How many in their thousands thought and taught, but have been long forgotten? Why is it that there were teachers and thinkers of profound insight whose teachings were too difficult to understand or to follow in the times in which they lived, leaving the legacy of the more popular ideas to flourish in history? The answer is that a survey of the history of philosophy, ancient, medieval, modern, and contemporary, suggests an answer. That there were thinkers during those times who had more knowledge to offer the thoughtful than the popularized wisdom in the popular view. Whole knowledge, but not rightly applied if it can be rightly applied in the sense of virtue. Excellence of character in all things virtuous. And teachings associated with those big names, i.e., Jesus, Muhammad, Gautama, Confucius, etc. Buddha, Confucius, and the rest are the names of images or icons, the ideas of notional people to whom can be attributed for convenience the inspiration for philosophy on the cases of Jesus and Muhammad of religion. These individuals previously mentioned helped to illustrate as representations of the entire period in which they, and increasingly many others, were raising questions about values, society, ideas of the good, an inquiry into fundamental questions about the world and humankind. And in this sense, they were very revolutionistic figures. No doubt others had done the same and in the millennia before them. But this period, that of the time between the 8th and the 3rd centuries BCE especially, there was a marked efflorescence of debate in both numbers of people involved and in written records of what emerged from their discussions. The axial age. Axial, from where we get the study of values. Axia in Greek meaning worth or value. Logy meaning study of. Axiology meaning the study of worth and value, and therefore the study of meaning. The study of purpose, a teleology. And on the basis of the emergence of philosophy in India and China, contemporaneously with its appearance in the Greek world, there was also Zoroastrianism in Persia, Judaism in the Middle East, among the mindset movements that constituted the age, as well as those of other religions of Egypt, and the myths and religions of Mesopotamia, such as Babylon. In this axial age, this 500-year period, and the 7 million year history of humankind, most, if not all, of today's world religions and philosophies found their origination or inception of invention, particularly during a time when writing was only around from about 6,000 years ago. So, as we think about these religions and philosophies that emerged during the axial age, I want you to really think about, why did these religions emerge? Why did they come about in the time that they did? Why did they have such a strong foothold on the conscience of humans? And why have humans sought to seek above and beyond the physical world of reality, to contemplate about imaginary figures and delusional illusions? I hope this will cause you to think about the phenomenon of religion, the epiphenomenon of consciousness, the invention of language, its nexus, and the eventual invention of writing. Thank you.